The following video contains scenes that some viewers may find distressing. Viewer discretion is advised. By the 2020s, the world as we had known it had changed. The definition of warfare had become redefined, and now, soldiers were not fighting wars on a battlefield, but the battlefield was now the human body itself. With the advent of groundbreaking technology that allows people to enhance their bodies with mechanical augmentations and upgrades, the world is set ablaze. New companies have formed and begin to develop incredible and terrible enhancements. The same companies begin to fight between themselves over assets and rights, and different factions, new and old, lock horns in a battle over control of this new technology or the eradication of it entirely. During this series, we'll be looking at all of the events that occur during the Deus Ex timeline, seeing how the world evolved along with human evolution, and seeing how humanity will get within reaches of a new golden age, only to then throw themselves into a dark age of oppression, conspiracies, mutilation and death. But before our story begins, we must first examine the events that sparked this revolution and study each of the peoples and factions involved. Welcome to the Prologue. Throughout history, mankind has become focused on the idea of evolution and becoming something more than just man. From antiquity, mankind has dreamt of being able to fly or to live forever, as is a popular theme in Greek mythology. During the Second World War, the Nazi regime became obsessed with the idea of the perfect human, and if there was indeed such a thing as a superior human being. But it wasn't until the turn of the twilight days in the 20th century that mankind had finally achieved what it had sought after since the dawn of time. In 1995, a 22-year-old scientist called Hugh Darrow would suffer from an incident while skiing, causing irreparable damage to his knee and forever forcing him to rely on a walking stick. But this was not good enough for Hugh. Already being familiar with computers and robotics, having worked with robotics since childhood, and with an interest in biology, Hugh had a vision of combining the two together. Is it possible to create prosthetic body parts to replace lost or damaged organs? The following year, Hugh purchased a prosthetics research firm, establishing Darrow Industries, and began to make his dream a reality. And against all the odds and expectations, Hugh Darrow had succeeded in giving birth to human augmentation. Despite being in quite a primitive stage, Darrow's creation paved the way for new and revolutionary developments in the relationship between organisms and machines, handing full control of human evolution over to those with the drive, the vision, and the hard cash to make it happen. However, there were, of course, drawbacks to this innovation. It is safe to say here that the ethical implications are obvious. Mechanical augmentations might make someone faster, stronger, more intelligent, but if you keep replacing human organs with machines, then are you still human? If so, then you have to consider augmented people as different class citizens from non-augmented citizens, and this can lead to social divisions, oppression, violence, and even war. If they're not human, then what exactly are they, and do they have the same rights as the average person? Do they get special treatment and have more rights, or are the laws of human rights not applicable to augmented people? But putting aside the ethical issue, there are also health issues that come with augmentations. Much in the same way that the human body will reject foreign tissues, even if it's a transplanted organ, the human body does not like having a machine attached to it. Without the correct treatment, augmented people could find that their augmented body parts are being shut down, or even their natural organs are failing. Although this issue was eventually resolved with the introduction of neuropozyne, a drug that allows this bond to occur, the effects were only temporary. Augmented people were now dependent on this drug from the moment they leave surgery till the moment they die. Sure, this was good for the supplying companies, as now they are making a killing on the production and distribution of this new drug, but now you have a large percentage of the population dependent on a rare, expensive, and sometimes dangerous chemical. This issue would remain a major problem for augmented people worldwide until the late 2020s. but the outcome of that is a story for another time.
You'll have to take this drug for the rest of your life.
To say that Hugh Darrow is possibly the most significant person in the progression to the next stage of human evolution in the 21st century is an understatement at best. His achievements would later earn him a place amongst the social elite. A group of secret intellectuals who have been in the background for centuries are now ready to show their hand and expose themselves to Darrow in order to achieve their ultimate goal. The Enlightenment. A period defined by exploration, scientific, economical and cultural revolutions, empire building, and radical free thinking. Issues such as these were seen to be dangerous and taboo by society up until this point, but some would decide to challenge these notions. On the 1st of May 1776, the German philosopher Adam Weishaupt gathered together a small band of modern intellectuals consisting of philosophers, mathematicians, scientists, and many others to the cause. Believing that society could not possibly achieve the ultimate utopian state if left to progress along its current path, the founding and all subsequent members of this group dedicated themselves to the cause of steering modern government towards their ideals through government and industrial infiltration. Resorting to secrecy over obvious pressure, this secret society would adopt the name Illuminati, meaning illuminated ones. Over the course of the following centuries, this organisation remained in the shadows, ever there but never seen, and yet the people of the Illuminati would shape the world and have a clear impact upon the future. By the mid-20th century, with the concept of globalisation taking off, the Illuminati decided that the organisation needs to be broken up into smaller organisations in order to focus on the control and direction of certain aspects of social life. In 1954, the Bilderberg Group was formed, which would oversee the financial side of society, involving the state of the economy and investments. Whilst in 1947, 7 years earlier, technological development and communications was put in the hands of the corresponding group, known as Majestic 12, an organisation that would influence the entire world in the following century. During the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the organisation saw a period of sustained progress towards the New World Order thanks to the endeavours of their current figurehead, Lucius de Beers. De Beers leads a very remarkable and successful career in the Illuminati, successfully arranging and pulling off several key events such as the assassination of US President John F. Kennedy along with his brother, and the 9/11 attack. But as the years wore on and time began to take its toll on Lucius's body, his mind remarkably remained strong, as did his resolve. Even though his closest associates would forever be waiting on Lucius like a pack of vultures, constantly on the lookout for any signs of weakness that would allow them to take his place, Lucius managed to remain at the top for a long time. Power would eventually pass from Lucius to the next leading figure in the Illuminati, that being De Beers' protégé Morgan Everett, but the transition of power was not an honourable one, as we'll see later in the series. This debate for power, though eventually resolved, does show that there is a major hole in the Illuminati's strength. Without unity, the organisation would become subject to the possibility of collapse or secret splinter cells being formed, a secret society within a secret society. And this is exactly what would eventually happen, though we will come to this in future videos. As the years continued, the organisation would gain new and influential members to the cause. As suggested earlier, Hugh Darrow was one such man. It is unclear exactly when Darrow joined, as is the reasons for the Illuminati approaching him. Perhaps they wanted another brilliant thinker amongst them, or perhaps this was the Illuminati's way of controlling the technology, but either way, Darrow had gained a significant ally. Despite the organisation being unified for the time at the turn of the 21st century, there were a few members of the society that seemed to be working either autonomously or by banding together in small groups. Morgan Everett, Beth Duclair, and Bob Page are but 3 examples of this. But if one is to look at the Illuminati, then it must be remembered that this secret society holds and controls many different organisations and have infiltrated almost all areas of modern society. the dominant global media network channel by the second decade of the 21st century, Picus keeps the masses informed. Established in 1985 by Sir Martin Darrow, father of the inventor of augmentation technology Hugh Darrow, the organisation would begin to quickly grow. But over the following years, due to Hugh's connection with the Illuminati, the media station would eventually become another Illuminatarian pawn and would act as a vital tool for controlling the amount of information that is available to the public. Not only did the station become under the thumb of the Illuminati, but it was also directly monitored and guided by the Illuminati's own Morgan Everett, who acted as the CEO of the Montreal branch. But with a famous station comes a need for a famous anchor, and thus Eliza Cassan was introduced. Now acting as the face of the station, Eliza broadcasts the news to the world 24/7, and is always remarkably up to date with current events and information. Though some would accuse her of being biased in her ideas and ideology, most would agree that Eliza Cassan is a worthy news anchor. It is clear so far that the Illuminati are primarily focused on the issue of control over all levels of human life. And with the advent of the new augmentation technology came a new aspect of human life to control. The Illuminati's response to this was to get the World Health Organization onto it. By the time the new technology was released, a new figurehead for the organization was chosen, and as planned, this was Beth DeClaire, a key member of the Illuminati. Being a very cold and goal-driven woman, it was easy for Beth to achieve her goals, and was able to influence many governmental officers, including the future US President Philip Meade, into having her own way. And with Hugh Darrow now as a member of the Illuminated Ones, the evolution of mechanical augmentation technology could be monitored constantly. But despite the Illuminati monitoring the development of this new technology along with its creator, they were not in fact the main organisation to lead its development. This honour would be taken up by others, and one man in particular, one with the dreams of allowing mankind to be something more than mortal. By the turn of the 21st century, Detroit, USA was suffering badly under the weight of economic recession, with many companies and shops being closed and company owners declaring bankruptcy. But in 2007, philanthropist David Sarif, a charismatic man and a visionary, purchased a failing auto factory in order to further his dream. Sarif believes in an almost objectivist ideal about the nature of human evolution. With new technologies becoming increasingly available, why wait for nature to dictate our own evolution? Why not control it and direct how we evolve ourselves? It was to this idea that Sarif began to develop new and revolutionary technologies into prosthetics and human augmentations. Being mentored by the creator of human augmentations himself, Hugh Darrow, Sarif was able to get a firm grasp upon the nature of augmentation technology and how to work with it. By 2009, the US military awarded Sarif with a contract to help US soldiers recover from their wounds with the help of prosthetics known as the Recycle Military Bill. By the end of 2010, the company, now known as Sarif Industries, had produced the first mechanical eye capable of restoring vision to the blind. At this point in time, the company had given a lot to humanity and had brought humanity to the next step of human evolution. In fact, things did not stop there. As the industry's knowledge on mechanical augmentation increased, so too did their ideas. Human upgrades were being devised and installed into people that would enhance their own existing abilities, such as having a quicker reaction time, being smarter, faster, stronger. The possibility was endless. However, the temptation for other avenues of human development was not lost on some, and thus Sarif Industries began to develop a taste for the dark side. Egged on by the US military, Sarif Industries also began to secretly develop mechanical augmentations that could be used for military purposes. Though David Sarif and other leading scientists would argue that the development of this type of augmentation was purely so that they could finance other projects, Sarif Industries would end up contributing a lot to the development of weaponized augmentation technology. The government wanted to transform soldiers from men and women carrying guns to men and women being walking guns. Firearms and different weapons were now being constructed into different augmentations, and specific weapon augmentations were also being developed. One in particular, the Typhoon explosion system, clearly shows how far Sarif Industries had fallen from its status as a life-saving and life-giving holy company to the creators of terrible weapons of war. In the midst of all of this, it must be noted that Sarif Industries did not enjoy an economic monopoly on mechanical augmentations, and other companies were in fact giving David Sarif a run for his money. Tai Yong Medical was one of these companies. Founded in 1977, the company would expand from its small foundations and blossom into a mega multinational corporation by 2009 thanks to the work of its CEO, Zhao Yongru. Having worked previously with the Chinese military using prosthetic limbs, Zhao was able to transform the company into the biggest, baddest company in the East, now being based on the Hengsha Islands by the 2020s. In an aggressive wave of expansionism, Zhao Yongru would take the company across the continent, absorbing and annexing any and all companies that showed any form of competition in the augmentation field. By the 2020s, Tai Yong had grown so successful that they now began to look into other markets as a means of expanding their profits, and the West was the obvious choice. Arriving in America, Zhao took no time at all in targeting Sarif Industries, knowing full well that David Sarif had both the means and the money to stand up to Zhao, and Sarif needed to be removed quickly. As a result, both companies entered into a private commercial war, one trying to destroy the other. Despite Tai Yong Medical coming across as an aggressive expansionist organisation, it must be remembered at this point that TYM was actually a pawn of the Illuminati, and Zhao made several attempts to eliminate Sarif as a threat to the Illuminati by offering him a position within the society, an offer that Sarif would refuse on every occasion. But despite Tai Yong fast becoming the leading company in the augmentation field, they were also pulling the strings of other companies, though smaller than Tai Yong, but in no way insignificant. The first company to mention would naturally be Lim International. Standing for liberty in mind and body, Lim aimed at providing state-of-the-art healthcare exclusively to augmented citizens. Established in 2011 by Dr. Hayden Suyong, Lim clinics began to spring up all across the world and would eventually become a lifeline to those who needed augmentation surgery or augmented-related healthcare. As such, Lim International is one of the main distributors of the neuropozyne drug, thus making living with augmentations much more manageable worldwide than before. By the 2020s, most cities around the world had at least one Lim clinic, and they are seen to be one of the most well-funded and professional augmentation institutions at the time. However, despite Lim International being one of the world's leading augmentation-related distributors, the research and development side of the technology surrounding augmentation maintenance would be carried out by another company. By the 1990s, the company known as VersaLife was already a well-established organisation. Most famous for being credited as the company that created and produces the neuropozyne drug, VersaLife would go on to conduct many other forms of research, some of which would be considered revolutionary, such as transgenics, while some others would be seen as outright immoral. In 1993, a company owned by VersaLife called White Helix Labs would conduct questionable tests on a group of newborn infants. In the wake of mechanical augmentations being created, this company wanted to study the relationship between living tissue and machines, if such an eventuality was possible. VersaLife gave the green light and experiments were carried out. The result would reflect the ethical premise, as most of the children died during the studies, but one child survived. It was believed that this particular child's DNA would be a compatible match should he ever undergo augmentation surgery, and thus this child could be of value should the technology ever be released. Though this child held what could possibly be the key to the future, he was eventually lost to VersaLife and the Illuminati when he was removed from the labs and eventually given to a couple who wanted to adopt, Arthur and Margie Jensen, who would name him Adam. As suggested, VersaLife was also another pawn of the Illuminati, or more specifically, Majestic 12, who would use the company to conduct various controversial tests, such as the experiments that were carried out at the Omega Ranch. But as the commercial war between the main companies intensified, the prospect of violent corporate attacks became more likely, and so both sides began to resort to the recruitment of many more security staff from both the general public, in the case of one ex-SWAT member in particular, Adam Jensen, who was recruited by David Sarif, and that of private professional mercenary companies. As the need for corporate security increased, so too did the number of private military contractors. Hiring themselves out to both corporate and governmental agencies alike, many of these gun-for-hire companies became a common sight throughout the world. Among these companies, only a few were deemed to be the best, such as Dynacorp, Sharp Edge, Intergarda plc, and Bell Tower. One of the leading professional security squads for hire at this period in time, Bell Tower Associates Incorporated, also known as the Bell Tower Group or simply Bell Tower, provides highly trained armed security forces to those companies with the cash to pay for them. Founded in 1997 by British Armed Forces officer Roger St John Frogs, the company has provided security services and military support to several key companies, industries, and even played a role during the Australian Civil War. What sets this group apart from other soldiers for hire came about in the year 2019. After reviewing their combat effectiveness in comparison to other companies, Bell Tower wanted to make sure that their soldiers were the special forces of the special forces. Plan Infinity was implemented as a result, which allowed Bell Tower soldiers to receive mechanical augmentations to improve their abilities. The result is that Bell Tower has emerged as the badasses of mercenaries and are not to be taken lightly. Warfare and combat has been taken to the next level. But amidst the current political climate comes a reaction. Not everyone agrees with the new technology and sees mechanical augmentations as immoral, unethical, and outright dangerous to society. I mean, after all, why should we play God? And opposition to the development, distribution, and use of augmentations has arisen in two key forms. Humanity Front, a political anti-augmentation group that came into existence in 2021. When a Utah shale rig worker loses his job in 2020 for not being able to do the same job that augmented workers are capable of, the US Supreme Court declares that anyone now has the right to amputate and mutilate themselves in order to become mechanically augmented, thus legalizing all enhancing augmentations. In direct opposition to this, William Taggart establishes the group Humanity Front. Despite acting as a political group with noble intentions, the truth of the matter remains that Humanity Front is yet another group being guided by the Illuminati. As an Illuminatus himself, Taggart's job is to try to restrict the use and development of mechanical augmentations to a limit of which the Illuminati could then easily control. This cannot happen whilst the technology is being developed by anyone with the brains and money to do it. The front can often be found staging large protests outside augmentation-related buildings, such as limb clinics, and even lend a hand to the rioting in Detroit in later years. However, for the most part, the members and supporters of Humanity Front do not advocate violence, and will often resort to peaceful and legal protests. But there are some that would not agree with this method. There are those who believe that the peaceful path is not the way to get your anti-augmentations view across, and many have resorted to violence. One group in particular is well known for it. Calling themselves Purity First, this extremist group was founded by an ex-Iraq-Afghanistan war veteran, Zeke Sanders. Having suffered several wounds during his tours of duty, Zeke underwent augmentation surgery in order to replace his lost eye thanks to the Recycle military bill. Back into service, Zeke's career took a turn for the worst, and Zeke found himself committing acts of terrorism and barbarism that were, quite honestly, out of his character. Blaming it all on his new augmentations, Sanders opted to having his augmentations removed. But this wasn't enough. Founding the Purity First group, Sanders would go on, ironically enough, to commit more acts of violence as a form of protest against the use of augmentations, including vandalism, kidnapping, arson, theft, and in some extreme cases, murder. Because of their actions, Purity First has no voice in the political arena, but they have created a sense of fear and dread into all of those around them, and not just in augmented people. The world is ablaze in this hellfire of new technology. Mankind is on the cusp of achieving greatness, but also stands on the brink of total destruction. As the criminal element of society begins to get their hands on this new tech, the world as we know it suddenly becomes unsafe. Over the course of the following months and years, society, and the men and women who live in it, will witness certain acts of a new breed of terrorism and violence, and some soldiers of the time period will witness the birth of a new type of warfare. People like Ben Saxon and Anna Kelso. But that is a tale for another time. Join us next time in True Review, where our first two heroes will be brought face to face with the horrors of this new technology. Both will walk a fine line between what is right and what will destroy them as they become caught up in a global conspiracy. All of this next time in Episode 1, The Icarus Effect.